4 steps to painting for beginning art students. If you're new here, please click the subscribe button for me, and if you enjoy the video, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Step number 1, prepare. I got a reference photo of a tape measure, and then I covered up an inch on either side of my painting, and the top 2 inches and the bottom 2 inches. Then I gessoed it. Gessoing is really important because it gives your paint something to kind of soak into. Then I gridded off my drawing. Gridding the drawing, I did gridded the photograph 1 inch at a time. So it's 1 inch squares. There's 8 across the top and 10 down the side. And then for the larger drawing paper that I gessoed, I did it 2 inches by 2 inches. So the grid is a 2-inch grid. It's got 8 across the top and 10 down the sides, but each square is 2 inches wide. When you draw this, draw 1 row at a time. Actually, draw 1 square at a time, going across in rows. This is extremely important, especially for students who don't know how to draw anyway. You're not having to draw anything in particular except for just lines and curves. So I really encourage you to go square by square. It will help out tremendously to get everything correct. What I was saying a minute ago about the gesso is if you put gesso down first, it prevents a lot of the paint from soaking into the paper, and it gives it a sturdier structure to actually paint on. So I don't always gesso my paper, but I think it's a very good practice. Almost down to the end of the drawing here. And by the way, not all of the drawing is absolutely correct. So as I paint, I will fix and correct some of the mistakes that I made in the drawing. Step number 3, underpainting. This is probably the easiest one. Start with what you know. I know that this part's black and that part's black, so that was why I started with black. You don't have to start with black first. You can do, whatever your painting is of, look at it, and whatever you know and understand about that particular drawing or painting, then that's where you start. It's also helpful to have a good cup of coffee while you're working on a painting. But I know that's not always possible for you, high school students. That's okay. Alright, then I'm going to mix up some background color here, and a really important rule of thumb is to never use color straight from the tube. Obviously there's times to break that rule, but for this case, the tape measure was sitting on a wooden table, and I don't plan on painting the grain of the table or anything like that, but I just wanted kind of a brown color. By the way, I'm colorblind, so this color may not be the best for, say, a oak table that was in the reference photo, but this is what I picked out, so I hope it's okay. Filled in the background, and by the way, this is still just the underpainting, so don't look at it like, oh, well, this is awful, because it's getting ready to get better, I hope. Because step number 4 is painting. This is where you do the fixing and the shading and all of the details. Now, I probably ought to divide this up into sections as well and talk about blending and all of that, but I didn't. This is just kind of step 4, because preparation is extremely important. Prepare your reference photo, prepare your paper, grid the paper off, grid the photograph off, draw it carefully. Those are big parts. For painting, for the 4th step, where you're actually doing the actual painting, it goes back and forth. 1 second you're painting this in, and then you're shading, and then you're tweaking it, and then you're fixing it, and then you go back to shading some more, and you paint over it, and then it's constantly kind of back and forth. So it's hard to nail this down into step 1, step 2, step 3, because what you're really doing is step 1 and maybe step 3, and then back to step 2, and then up to step 5. It's confusing. So if you'll do the first 3 steps and then learn how to blend, then step 4 will be a lot easier for you. So you can see here I'm shading in the shadows as the light folds around the top of the tape measure, and I'm going to do the little notch, the little thumb rest thing there. It just requires kind of a lot of blending in. I slowed the video down here so you could really kind of watch this and see how I blend this and rework that. Don't forget highlights. Highlights are kind of part of the details, and I added those up at the top a little bit earlier than I probably should have. Look right here at how the side is really kind of wompy jawed. It does not look right. I didn't draw it right to begin with, and then when I painted it in, I realized that it wasn't drawn very well. So don't give up on your painting. Acrylic paint was made to paint over. So if you have a mistake or a problem somewhere, fix it. So here I am fixing the drawing mistakes, and now it looks a whole lot better, don't you think? Now I'm going to go back into the background, and I'm doing it as much like the photograph as I can in terms of shadow and light. I'm not worried about the wood grain in the photograph. I'm just basically getting the basic values where they go. I'm not trying to do a photorealistic painting either. So there's going to be a lot of brush strokes and a lot of energy and character in here, I hope. Throwing in a little bit of the shadow on the background, that really made it pop out. I'm going back and fixing the stripe that goes around this. And by the way, when you do the stripe, I recommend just, putting in kind of a fat line and then take the black and go back and fix it. Anytime you're doing something skinny, it's really hard to do skinny details with a brush. So to me, it's a lot easier to paint over the edges of the details. Anyway, so I had to go back and paint over the yellow a little bit of white again to cover up some of the grid lines, and then now I'm going back and painting over that with some yellow, and I'm adding some orange for the shadows on the yellow part of the tape measure. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Take the tape off here. I think it looks a little bit professional with the white border. I'm kind of proud of it. I decided not to write the words on the side. That maybe be a whole nother video later on. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget the thumbs up. That's extremely important. Also, if you're new, like I said, please subscribe. And if you've got any questions or comments or ideas, please let me know down in the comments below. I love to hear from y'all. I think that's really important as well. So until next time, have fun painting.